Homeless teen carries blind alien girl to healer, unaware she's a mob boss's daughter. The rain hammered down on the cracked pavement of 5th Street, turning the gutters into rivers of reflected neon. Marcus pulled his cardboard shelter tighter around his shoulders, the December cold biting through the 3 layers of stolen shirts he wore. 17 years old and invisible. That was his existence in the sprawling city. People walked past him like he was part of the scenery, another piece of urban decay they'd learned to ignore. That's when he heard the sound. Not the usual city noise, car horns, distant sirens, shouting voices. This was something else. Something like breathing, but wrong. Labored. In pain. Marcus peeked out from beneath his makeshift shelter and spotted her in the alley across the street. At first, he thought she was some kind of art installation, a sculpture someone had dumped in the rain. Her skin gleamed with an iridescent blue that seemed to shift with each flash of the neon signs above. Her hair was white as moonlight, plastered against her face by the downpour. Her eyes were closed, and thick bands of scar tissue crisscrossed where they should have been. A blind alien girl, lying in a puddle in the worst part of the city. Marcus knew better than to get involved. That was the first rule of survival on the streets. Keep your head down, stay out of trouble, take care of yourself first. He'd broken that rule before, and it usually ended badly. But something about the way she was shaking, the labored gasps that came from her throat, made him move. He crossed the street, his worn sneakers splashing through the rain. Up close, she looked even more wrong for this place. Her clothes were too fine, some kind of silvery material that seemed to repel the water. There was dried blood on her shoulder, a wound that had clearly been hastily bandaged. "Hey," he whispered, kneeling beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her head turned toward the sound of his voice, though her scarred eyes remained fixed on nothing. "Human?" she asked, her voice like wind chimes made of glass. I can sense you. Your heat signature." "Yeah, I'm human," Marcus said. He had no idea what else to say. He glanced around the alley, paranoid that someone would appear and demand to know what he was doing. "What happened to you? Are you sick?" "Poisoned," she gasped. "The venom is deep. I can feel it spreading through my bloodstream. My father's enemies, they wanted to send a message." She turned her head slightly toward him. "I need to reach Dr. Yeneth in the underground clinic. On Haven Street. She's the only one who can." The girl's body convulsed, and she cried out, a sound that was almost inhuman in its anguish. Marcus's first instinct was to run, get back to his shelter, pretend he'd never seen her. But he found himself looking at her face instead, the fear there, mixed with a kind of resigned acceptance that struck him as deeply unfair. She was young, maybe around his age, and she was terrified. "Okay," he said. "Okay, I'll help you. But you need to hold on to me." Getting her up was harder than he expected. She was light, impossibly light, but her body kept seizing, went rigid with pain. Marcus managed to get her arm around his shoulders, taking most of her weight on his narrow frame. He'd been undernourished for so long that he felt like he might snap under the strain, but he drove forward anyway, moving through the rain-slicked streets. Haven Street was 6 blocks away, and every step felt like a mile. The girl, she told him her name was Vex, would suddenly cry out, her body going taut with spasms. Marcus found himself talking to her, not really knowing why, maybe just to keep them both grounded in reality. "I've lived on the streets for 3 years, he said, turning a corner, nearly slipping. "My mom was a nurse. She wanted me to go to college, study something practical. I wasn't doing great in school, so I started working part-time at a restaurant. One day, I didn't show up. Then I didn't go home. Then I didn't exist anymore. It was easier to disappear than to try." Vex's head turned toward him, and despite the pain etched into her features, she seemed to listen. "Why are you telling me this?" she whispered. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "Maybe because you're the first person in 3 years who's actually looked at me, even if you can't really look." They turned onto Haven Street, and Marcus felt a surge of relief. But then he saw the motorcycles. 3 of them, blocking the street ahead, their riders bulky and scarred, with the distinctive silver armbands of the Crimson Circle, one of the city's most notorious organized crime syndicates. Marcus's heart dropped. He tried to backtrack, but more bikers appeared behind them, forming a semicircle that cut off retreat. "You got the boss's daughter?" one of them called out, his voice thick with a Molotov accent. "The little princess, Vex?" Marcus's blood turned to ice water. He looked down at the girl in his arms, really seeing her now. The fine clothes, the confident bearing despite the pain, the way she held herself like someone accustomed to power and respect. She was hurt. I was just taking her to get help," Marcus stammered. One of the bikers laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "That's exactly what we need. A hero." He revved his engine. "Mr. Volkov will want to thank you personally." But Vex was moving, her blind eyes somehow tracking to where the nearest biker stood. "Stand down," she said, and even weak with poison, her voice carried absolute authority. "Every single one of you.
Stand down."
The bikers exchanged confused glances. Then slowly, with mechanical obedience, they lowered their bikes and stepped back, creating a corridor through their line. Marcus stared at her. "What?" "Echolocation," Vex explained, her voice getting slightly stronger. "I'm not blind to sound. And these men are trained to obey. My father, he's not a kind man, Marcus, but he takes care of his own." She turned her scarred face toward him. "You were taking me to Dr. Yeneth. Keep going. These men will escort us. And then, I'd like you to come home with me. There's a position I think you'd be perfect for. Personal security. Someone who would help a stranger on the street deserves that." Marcus walked through the parting crowd of bikers, half expecting them to change their minds and grab him. But they didn't. One of them even fell into step beside him, radioing ahead that the boss's daughter was being brought in. The underground clinic smelled like antiseptic and strange chemical compounds. Dr. Yeneth, an elderly alien woman with skin like burnished copper, took one look at Vex's wound and immediately got to work. Marcus sat in a waiting room that was somehow more comfortable than anywhere he'd been in 3 years and allowed himself, for the first time in a long time, to hope that life might get better. When Vex emerged from treatment an hour later, her step was steady, her breathing normal. She walked straight to Marcus and took his hand, a gesture so simple and human that it somehow felt radical coming from her. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing me when I was invisible." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "Right back at you," he replied. Neither of them knew it yet, but this moment would change everything. Marcus would never sleep on the streets again, and Vex would discover that her father's new security chief, humble, principled, and impossibly kind, was exactly what she needed. Sometimes salvation came not from expecting to be saved, but from saving someone else first.